We have multiple surprising Leafs updates to go over today ahead of a huge game tonight. Multiple updates, including a huge update surrounding Brandon Tanev as well as Morgan, Riley, and others. We have a bunch of things to go over today that have big implications, not only in this game, but going forward as the Leafs prepare for a huge stretch of games. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Thank you guys for your continued support. And keep in mind, we'll be live following tonight's game against the Utah Hockey Club. But there's a lot to go over today, and obviously a very, very late game tonight. So we're getting some late practice. There was an optional practice today and a bunch of updates to go over. And let's start with what we project to be the lines for tonight's game. Now, a couple updates. This is from yesterday. They obviously didn't have lines today because the skate was indeed optional. And there's a bunch of different things. So let's go over the updates we have for today from Craig Berube. Joseph Woll is getting the start instead of Anthony Stolarz, even though some people were thinking based off of the practice yesterday that Stolarz is going to be in net. It is Joseph Woll. Stolarz will start on Thursday against the much better team in the Florida Panthers. So Stolarz gets the start against the game that matters the most. Not that tonight doesn't matter much. And Calle Järnkrok is back in for Nick Robertson. And Nick Robertson is out. But Darius, we also have some other line changes as Bobby McMann has moved back down to the third line. Bunch of things to go over here. What are your thoughts on this? Because at this point, this is the biggest game up to date of the season. Because if you lose heading into that game against Florida, you are in rough shape.
That's a must win against the Florida Panthers. And at this point in time, Aaron Ekblad, as we're recording this, was just suspended for 20 games. And also Matthew Tkachuk is not playing. So that's very interesting. We're going to keep tabs on that as well as the season progresses. But, optional skate on the morning after some of your worst performances of the year, pretty interesting to me, very interesting. But nonetheless, they're back in action tonight. And they had a team meeting as well yesterday where they were discussing some of these things, and apparently some unnamed players stood up and spoke to the entire team. They were having a bit of an intervention, I guess, of sorts, that they have to get back on track here. And it's true. They have to get that first spot. If you don't, you're playing either Florida or Tampa, whichever way it shakes out, because Tampa has suddenly played their way back into the mix here. But in terms of the lineup decisions, Nick Robertson's coming out, Calle Järnkrok back. So obviously the way they were skating yesterday is very different from the way that they're going to line up tonight. So Bobby McMann, it looks like he'll be back on the third line again. I assume maybe Holmberg up there on the second line. I don't know the exact plan at this point in time, but going to be very interesting to keep tabs on. But they have to win tonight. That is the fact of the matter. I don't care who's playing on the second line, the third line. I don't care. They have to win this game, and Joseph Woll is going to be a net for it. This is a big redemption game for him against, obviously, Utah, but, after a pretty poor performance that he had last week. So he's got to bounce back. Stolarz goes Thursday, and I think they're just going to alternate from this point out.
Yeah, it's very interesting that they make a lot of changes following a very good offensive game from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, they blew the 4-2 lead. It wasn't the best game as it pertains to shot on goal, but they did generate a lot of offense from that group. Now, like you mentioned, it's either going to be Holmberg or Domi on that second line. I would assume probably Holmberg, and then they'll have McMann, Lawton, and Domi on the third line, which I actually like quite a bit. A lot of goal-scoring opportunities there, and I'm looking to see tonight Scott Lawton play better, and Brandon Carlo alongside Morgan Riley. Again, Carlo had a fantastic periods 2 and 3 of his debut. In the first period was a little bit rough, but yeah, you mentioned it. They had a meeting and guys spoke and trying to get this thing straightened out following their third straight loss. Head coach Craig Berube has been frustrated with the team's defensive mistakes and lack of focus as of late. Held the team meeting after the Avalanche game to address the recent struggles. Some unnamed players also spoke up. So again, they are in desperate need of a win tonight. Now, this, we always say, so we said it probably a few times this season that it's the biggest game of the season, which is true at the time. But tonight, I think obviously the game Thursday is technically more important as it stands compared to the standings, especially now with Aaron Ekblad missing what is essentially the rest of the season, which is, I guess, good for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not an injury. I believe it's PEDs. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it is going to be an interesting home stretch there for the Panthers and, of course, the Leafs. But you need to take care of business tonight. And I like the fact that Joseph Woll is starting tonight because I want Anthony Stolarz to play on Thursday. Stolarz has been better. I think he just is the better goalie, and Joseph Woll now has a chance to get some redemption for himself and for this team because he kind of let his team down in the last game. And surrounding, you mentioned the optional skate. Very interesting. It's optional following a horrific loss. That being said, they're on a lengthy road trip here. So there is something to be said with that. Austin Matthews on the ice early before the optional skate. It's not something he usually does. He's been struggling a little bit, had a goal last game. It's going to be interesting here. And there's a lot of different things to go over. But Darius, I want to bring up this now because this is on Chris Tanev. And this is what Craig Berube said yesterday night. He's not where he wants to be. We got to be careful. It's unfortunate because we miss him. He's a big part of our team. But at the same time, we want to do what's best for the player. And the player's going to do what's best for himself. So a little bit scary with where he's not where he wants to be. I don't think his return is going to be anytime in the next couple of games or anytime in the immediate future, probably next week, maybe mid to late March, but that's a speculation on my end. Maybe he'd be good to go for Florida's game on Thursday. I don't think so, based on the verbiage they're using. What are your thoughts on that? We need him back. The Leafs need him back desperately, but hopefully they can contain a little bit, because even though they do need him back and he's a part of the reason they've been playing bad, I mean, the Leafs defensive core needs to step up regardless.
Yeah, the rest of the players need to step up. But Chris Tanev, to me, is arguably the Leafs' most valuable player this year, heading into the playoffs. At least in terms of, what playoff hockey brings. They're going to need this guy playing 100%, or as close to 100% as you're going to be after the season. So keep him out until he's feeling good. There's no point in playing him. The rest of the guys got to step up. You need this guy for when it matters most. Obviously, you're trying to get first, but you're going to be in the playoffs anyway. So you need this guy to be playing at, his top form. So keep him out until he's feeling, better, until he's feeling more like himself. We don't know the exact injury and the severity of it, but it looks like he should have been returning soon. He's been on the ice, he's been skating, but clearly, probably going to keep him out a little while longer, which I agree with. Wait till he's close to 100%, right? Until he's feeling like himself, and then bring him back. And obviously, Matthew's skating, putting in some work. He hasn't really been himself. He's still been impressive this season. Don't get me wrong. He's still playing really well. And I think, honestly, he's really impressed me, especially against the Avalanche, on his play away from the puck and on the boards. I thought he's added a different element, I think, especially this year, to his game. That's going to help him in the playoffs. So as long as he continues to do those things, I think it's going to help the Leafs win. Obviously, you'd like to see him score goals, but feel like he's still probably dealing with an injury of some sort this year, but should be very interesting to see what they do tonight. Obviously, you need to take advantage of external factors. Everything that's happening with Florida and the guys that they have out of the lineup, take advantage of that. Win as many games as you can. You're playing them Thursday. That's a huge game. This is the last game of this road trip. I know it's a late start, but it's the last one. Give it everything you have. You have a couple days off, and then you play Florida at home, and then you're at home for the majority of your next couple games. So give everything you have tonight. Get these 2 points. You come home feeling good, and then you're playing the Panthers at home in a huge game on Thursday night. So, and you got Stolarz in that as well. So give yourself and put yourself in the best spot possible.
Yeah, I think the game Thursday is as close as you can get to a playoff game for a regular season game that we've seen thus far, and also in general. I mean, if 4 point swing here is the potential in the standings, which matters with games left. So it's going to be interesting. Quickly about the goaltending downturn. It's on everybody. Everybody's part of it. We're a team. We got to be better in front of them, and I'm sure they want the goals back. So it's all on us. On all of us, sorry, coaches included. We've got to get back on track. So Stolarz, I have more faith in him than Wall. That being said, Joseph Wall needs to have a bounce back game. You can't rely on one the rest of the way. And this is interesting now before we wrap up. Berube spoke out on Bobby McMahon moving to the second line. He said, I just wanted a little more speed on that line with Tavares and Willie. Bobby skated well in Denver. He was physical, made some plays, just tweaking things a bit. So we were thinking, okay, he's definitely, you pair this, the fact that they practiced yesterday with Bobby McMahon alongside Tavares and Willie. That is not the case. Literally minutes ago, it dropped that we actually switched it up again this morning. We're throwing you guys for a loop. Bobby McMahon, like you mentioned, is back on the third line. So very interesting there. I mean, I like Bobby McMahon, the second line, more than Pontus Holmberg, but at the same time, Pontus Holmberg does provide he plays a lot better when he's on the second line, like most players would. Any thoughts on this? They're throwing for some loops. The reasoning they gave was because they have him on the second line with Calle Jarnkrok out, which is what we saw in the game a couple of days ago and in practice yesterday, but they put Jarnkrok back in instead of Nick Robertson for what Craig Berube says, because just hard decisions. You want to get Calle Jarnkrok back out there. Nothing against Nick Robertson. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, you got to go with what the lineup needs. So Calle Jarnkrok coming in, he's probably going to play on the fourth line. You got to reshape the lineup a little bit so McMahon goes back down. It makes sense to me. I wonder if they kind of experiment with it, in game, because I think McMahon up on the second line, it's probably what it's going to be heading into the playoffs. We don't know what's going to happen with Pacioretty, so we'll see what happens during the game. I wonder if they make adjustments. Obviously, if things are going well, they're not going to do that, but anything's possible. We'll see at this point. I didn't think Jarnkrok was going to come back in, but that is the case, and then we'll see what they do again on Thursday.
Yeah, I think Jarnkrok's played really, really well in his few games, so a lot of moving pieces, and what I'm most excited for is we get to watch Brandon Carlo again, and hopefully Scott Lawton look a bit more comfortable out there now that they've had a practice under their belt. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below your thoughts. I will be live following the game tonight, so make sure you stay tuned for that. See you guys later. Cheers.